Started. I'm Susan Letterman White over at Mass Lomac, and I want to welcome you and thank you for tuning in to this webinar for busy lawyers. These monthly webinars are designed to bring you practical information in just 20 to 30 minutes, and this is information that you can bring back to your office and implement right away. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Stephen Gallagher. Stephen Gallagher's own career transition took him through several mid-sized law firms, the legal department of a major bank corporation, and eventually to the New York State Bar Association, where he spent 13 years as the practice management advisor, teaching and coaching solo and small firm practitioners throughout New York State. Before I turn it over to Stephen, I'd like to let you know that we will have time at the end of the presentation to take questions that you have. Just put any questions you have right into the chat box, and at the end, I'll relay those questions to Stephen. Stephen, take it away.
All right, thank you, Susan. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us this lunch period. I know you're all very busy, and so we want to make these 25 minutes, 20 minutes meaningful, and then I hope you do use the chat feature to ask questions or to scold me about something I said. This is a big topic, transition planning for lawyers. And so what I would like to do is to start very broadly by talking about the aging process that is really driving part of this transition. So let me activate this, and we'll start going through with it. First, we're all familiar with the number of boomers that are at retirement age. As a boomer myself, it's tough to ignore it, but I want to invite everyone to be open to some of what I'm sharing, because I think all of us have to work together to address this problem. Aging workforce is actually changing everything. So let me just cite a couple of the some data I pulled together. That today, 40 million people are 65 and older. That's 14% of the population. In 2030, we're going to be at 70 million, which is 20% of the population. And we're growing at 10,000 people, boomers, are turning 65 a day. A couple other quick facts. Life expectancy in 1950 was 48 years old. Life expectancy in 2010 grew to 68. And life expectancy today is 78.1. All right? And at the same time, baby boomers account for about 80% of the nation's net worth. So one of the legal profession's challenges is, how do we help you integrate that with younger people, or let younger people gain access to it. Before I touch on this, one health concern, I found that people 51 to 61, there's 20% of that age group has a chronic health condition that does interfere with work. So we'll be talking about moving on to the next transition. How do we handle that best? So on any online program, I teach online courses through Zoom at one of the universities in the Philadelphia area. And I always like to try to get a feel for what people are looking for when they come in. So if you're comfortable, use the chat feature. I think you click on it at the bottom. And let me know what you're looking for from this 20-minute session. Are you a partner over 50 years old, a lawyer over 50 years old who is beginning to explore a new phase of life, or is beginning to look at maybe being retired from the practice? or just retiring. Solos.
What do you mean? What? That's the mic on the platform.
Sounds like. All right, solos is another huge group that usually tunes in with this. And these can be people looking to retire or people thinking that they're going to be able to live forever, or at least work for as long as possible. Bar leaders is another group that with bars looking to figure out why young people are not joining them. This is an area of great interest today. Transition and well-being. The next group is, I hope we have young lawyers on the line interested in growing their practice. This is always, so it's always helpful with this. And then law firm managers, I do hope we have some of those, because law firms, in order to keep talented young people, are going to have to be more open and more flexible and more resilient to this whole area of transition. Right, so if you want to use the chat feature, Susan can let us know at the end how many were this, that, or the other, and we can see if we address that. All right.
So if you want to know, I have solos looking to create a backup if hit by a bus. That's what one person posted. If anyone else wants to put up there, now's the time.
Okay, great. The next, as we get started with this, I want to look broadly now at what's happening with the aging group. We must change the way we view the whole aging process. This should be a period of continuous growth, whereas our parents would work until a certain point and then it's the end of the process. We now have to look at retirement transition planning as a beginning of a new stage, a renewal. So we have to design, be allowed to think about that. Joanne Jenkins, the CEO of AARP, we all receive mail from AARP, any of us that are 50 years or older, wrote just an excellent book on disrupt aging. And our goal should be to gain confidence in navigating life's transition, see ourselves as integral parts of society rather than to be isolated from society. So 3 of the things I'd like you to jot down that Joanne says for the public we should do this, and I contend for the profession we should do this. I don't know if many of you continue to jot down with paper. You could try that if you do. Others, I'm sure, have an app on their cell phone that what you remember. One of the 3 things I'd like to come back to later is aging is a process that should not be attempted alone, that you should involve the community. And I'm very pleased to see what Mass Lomat is doing and getting a group of people together to discuss these well-being issues. The second she mentions is innovations needed in programs, services, and social structures. And I'm going to encourage you to get involved in that. That's in law firms, that's in bar associations, and that's in life itself. You have to look at it differently and try different things. And the last of the 3 tips there, aging is not just for people 50 and older. It involves everyone that's logged on. It will impact on you one way or the other. All right, so I thought I'd just try to use a picture. This is an Irish immigrant family that is actually my grandfather's family, Leahy, and they grew up in 5 Nightingale Street in Dorchester, Mass, and later moved to 706 River Street in Mattapan. So if you know, if either of those houses are still standing and you live in the area, you can email me and let me know or put it in the chat. But I wanted to say this is that my grandfather, Hugh, worked for a company, CF Hubby, which is a department store, was a department store. And 2 of his daughters married 2 Gallaghers. So if you're a relative and you're on the line, you can also use the chat box to let me know. That's always good to know. All right, now my background, as Susan mentioned, my original work in transition, my first degree is in counseling, and I worked at Temple Law School as a placement coach when the large firms from the city would come out and recruit in the fall, and then I would work with those that weren't picked up during that process. I did that for a number of years before going to a couple law firms as the legal administrator, then on to a bank corporation that was a merger of two banks that had two legal departments, which they found that they didn't need two. So I lived through that transition. And then in 1990, I transitioned up to the New York State Bar, moved from Philadelphia to Albany, and was responsible very much, as Mass Low MAP people are doing, is helping people with managing the practice, that type of thing. So I got involved with that. In 2000, Robert Putnam wrote a book, Bowling Alone, and this is when he talked about how young people are not joining organizations, and this is when bar associations really started to look at why young people don't join anymore. So I got very interested in this topic. So back in 2001, I wrote a couple articles for NABI, the National Association of Bar Executives, about bar associations in transition. And my question is, should they exist? How do they help people? How do they help lawyers do what you do? So I got very involved in this topic, and ever since then I've been writing a number of articles in this area. So this family I'll talk about just a bit later, about when I start defining transition. I did some work in 2007 with the Mass Bar, a strategic plan, and also with the Boston Bar. So I've met people in the legal arena in the Boston area. So again, if you're on the line and I've met you before, please remind me. My memory's not what it used to be. Okay, and what we'll be talking about, I'll be briefly going through, and I have it back here, is, let me see if I can get this changed. Okay, we'll be looking at change and transition. We'll be looking at the stages of transition. We'll be looking briefly at solo and special needs of solos, and creating a business that will outlive you. Just so I'll touch on these things. In 30 minutes, I'll just give you things you can follow up on. So it's never easy. It's a difficult process for sure. And I'll give you some tools that I hope you'll be able to use. This is one of the texts that I rely on a great deal. William Bridges is the guru on managing transition. He's written about 8 or 9 books. He was the former president of the Association of Humanistic Psychology. So I'll be sharing some of his, and the information's in the references. I like to focus on life transition as it relates to career transition, and that includes retirement transition. 45% of retirees end up working somewhere during the next phase of their life. So it's just another career transition. All right. All right. Now, just looking at the definition, just the distinction between change and transition. Change takes place in a moment of time and is over. Frequently, it's the process you have very little control over. It happens to you. So change happens to all of us. You know, young attorneys getting out of law school, finding a job, not finding a job. This is all change that happens to you. Graduating from law school, I mentioned, or being asked to leave a firm is all a change. Now, the term transition, which is important for you to understand, transition is a process of letting go of the ways things used to be and then taking hold of the way they subsequently become. Learning what you do with yourself when you no longer go to the office is a type of transition. preparing yourself, thinking about what you're going to do in retirement is a transition. Wondering how long you're going to continue to kill yourself in this particular job before you make a change is under the definition of transition. And Bridges has two types of transition. One he calls reactive, and that's when something happens to you, you react to it, and you make a change. The other is developmental transition. That is really at the end of a period, there's a change in you that you don't like the status quo anymore. You feel you're not learning, developing as quickly as you would like to. And this is a big area that law firms really have to get more involved in because young people think differently. I'll go out on a limb and say that. Think differently, absorb information differently, react differently than some of the older individuals on the line. Now, does the profession have a problem with this aging population? I did a program with the Nova Scotia Barrister Society, and they have great data on all their lawyers because they all use the same professional liability insurer. And in 2016, 481 of their 1,825 lawyers had been practicing for over 20 years. By 2036, 1 in 3 Nova Scotians will be of retirement age. So on the one hand, the lack of legal services could be quite dramatic. But on the other hand, for younger attorneys, the opportunities could be dramatic. Then go back to you, aging is not to be done by yourself. All right? Now, let me go back to my grandfather, Hugh. And what he did was when Hovey and Company was purchased by Jordan Marsh, he made his decision to leave that large family and move to the Philadelphia area to work for a department store, Strawbridge and Clothier. I use this as an example because this happens in law firms all the time, that for different reasons you decide to move on and do something else. You're not a bad individual. You see opportunities. And can you imagine the transition that took place between Hugh and his wife, May, in terms of you're going to move us where and why? And this was around 1928, I believe, something like that. So transition is in everyone's life, and law firms and bar associations have to account for that. They have to work on that. All right, now back to William Bridges' very simple stages of transition. He believes this happens all the time. And in my coaching practice, I do see this, and I keep this in mind with every client. The beginning, first stage of the transition process is ending, letting go of the old ways. Now, I'm sure we all know people who have gone into retirement and struggle with letting go of the old ways. So this is something that you first have to sort of resolve, that I'm no longer going into the office. I'm no longer going to be able to work forever. So the beginning of any stage of transition, my grandfather ending, leaving Boston, deciding he couldn't take it anymore, whatever it was, or the job in Philadelphia was greater. Ending was the first part. The next one that is somewhat, I think, unusual. I think lawyers have difficulty with the neutral zone. So once you've decided it's ended, you enter a neutral zone, which is going through an in-between time when old is gone, but new is not fully operational. And if you go through this by yourself, it's very, very difficult. This is where you need a committee of like-minded people, you need friends, you need to explore, you need to experiment, you need to try things, and you need to be allowed to do this. In the legal profession, I found this is very difficult because it's perceived as a weakness, a lack of direction. It's really not. It's a period to explore and to build what I'll be showing you as prototypes. And then the third and final stage is a new beginning, is that you then start something new. This is when people develop the new identity, experience the new energy, and discover the new sense of purpose until the next transition comes about. So the whole process, if you're here looking at retirement planning, this is an ongoing process where you experiment, you collect more information, you try. You don't just sit back and think about it. So this is part of this, what I find so helpful with Bridges information. One of my friends recently told me one of the professional challenges, the biggest challenge is a large number of 70-year-old lawyers are going to find themselves unable to maintain their living standards if they stop working, so they continue to work. And at the same time, the profession has a large number of recent graduates who owe so much debt that they have to accept work for less. My contention is that the senior lawyers and the young lawyers have to work collectively for the well-being of the profession. Both will benefit if we can figure out how best to do that. The next author that I'm bringing up, I have this page up for Designing Your Life, which is a little different. Let me see. Close that screen. Okay. What lawyers of all ages need today is a process, a design process for figuring out what they want, whom they want to grow into, and how to create a life they love. This is from authors Bill Burnett and Dave Evans that are really from the engineering side of things. Designing Your Life, how to build a well-lived, joyful life, comes out of Stanford University. And it's, again, a little bit different thinking than I think most of you have gotten in law school. And we'll be looking at the features this has that makes it a little bit different. But in retirement or transition planning, I found this very helpful tool. You can also look at TED Talks. Burnett and Evans have a number of TED Talks that in 15 minutes explain this concept very well. This is the book itself. Designing Your Life, a well-designed life, is a life that is generative. In other words, you have to keep playing with it. You have to keep trying. It's a constant, creative, productive, changing, and evolving process. So you need a safe environment to do this. So I'm hoping that those of you that are interested in transition, retirement, planning will be more willing to talk about it, to allow people to hear you, because I think that traditionally when an attorney talks about possibly slowing down, somebody's eating your lunch pretty quickly. Will your clients leave you? It's a lot of complexities. It's a difficult issue, but I think as we build communities that are allowed to talk about transition as for your own well-being, I think it's important. In life design, you will learn to reframe, and reframing is looking at things through a different set of eyes, trying it another way. If I retire, will I stop working entirely? Can I work part-time for a different firm? And on and on and on and on. So you have to allow yourself to do that. And the larger the group of people you can get around you, the better you'll be. How am I doing with time? All right. The best results come from radical collaboration. Radical collaboration is getting as many people involved as possible. I find that the traditional bar association is a very closed group that divides things into silos, and something like well-being slices across all the silos. So how can you work with your bar association to be more open and discuss this? I think I see that in Mass LoMAP, which I'm very pleased to see. But how do you get communities of people working together? Many of the best ideas are going to come from other people, believe it or not. So retirement planning, deciding to start your own firm, whatever it would be, comes with a community of people sharing the information. Now, quickly, special needs for sole practitioners is a huge topic. If most of the people online are that, the very first thing that with this would be the vast majority of sole practitioners have not put together any type of plan, and I understand part of the problem is you have to keep the lights on, and you can't come up with a particular date and time to say I'm leaving it. Again, I say reach out to young people, work with young people, and you'll be much better off. First step into any transition planning for sole practitioners is a need for assisting attorney. Close your practice in the event of your retirement. You've heard that. It's in every professional liability carrier probably has you sign up in someone else's name. But realistically, peers should be talking about how we do this, how best can we transfer our business to someone younger who will need and can also serve your clients, your lifelong clients. So I don't want to dwell on this too much because I'm not sure how many people we have in this category. If you don't have employees, if you're a sole practitioner, you have no employees, this might be the time to at least hire a paralegal or a part-time attorney to both jointly help serve your clients and help you systematize your clients, so if you would want to sell it, or at least get your clients down to the next level. The last book that I want to mention is Built to Sell. Built to Sell is a book that says that too many entrepreneurs, the greatest failure of an entrepreneur is you don't build systems. If it relies on you, your practice is worthless. If you build systems, someone else can purchase, buy into, use the systems that you've built. So one should look to do that. Just a quick learning objectives. I think we're getting close to the ends. The outcomes that we look at, you should now understand that the legal profession needs to expand the options for lawyers to transition from full-time practice. A lot of people will be looking for part-time jobs, and the profession, the Bar Association, really has to help put senior lawyers together with junior lawyers. I've been working with a couple bar associations, and they seem to be more receptive with that. You should begin to appreciate why planning for life is, after retirement, is just as important. We're going to live another 20 years, and we might as well figure out how best to enjoy it. Designing your life is building things, building prototypes, being allowed to try this, try that, try the other things. Assistant attorney I put in here as an objective. And finally, you should begin to look at your transition process. I've included some of the resources you had there in LoMAP. There's lists. Elder Law has a great publication, Closing of Small Law Practices there. I put the books that we referenced. A couple other states have, and if you can see me, this is New York's book for how you transfer your practice. I forgot to mention at the beginning, we have multi-generational family assistant is, oops, let me close that, major consideration for retirement now. And I'm glad this individual, Melly, did not come through that door behind me. She's on deck, but I'm glad she worked out all right. Susan, do we have any time for questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. We're doing fine. I would encourage anybody who has questions, please write them into the chat box now. And while we're waiting, so, you talked a little bit about reframing and the importance of that. And of course, you and I really understand that,
Right.
but maybe you could give some examples from your clients of what they did to reframe their situation and were then enabled to move forward.
Well, I can think of one in particular because we have the sole practitioners on the line. He decided he didn't want to practice law forever, that he was fine with it. And he decided that he wanted to get out in 5 years. And so he searched for a young attorney interested in that same area of practice. And he looked for someone particularly committed to the geographical area. And then he went through a couple people, hit a home run your first time up. But he found an individual that fit in, and then he's working with them. So he's handing over the administration, he's listening to the use of paralegals, he's available to meet other clients and things like that. So looking at things differently. If you're turning 65 and it's retirement time and you're healthy and you want to continue to do it, well, maybe you want to reframe it by looking, how about 4 days a week? How about taking the month off during the summer? Just, not being driven with all the old rules. The one bar association I'm working with, we have the senior lawyers actually working together with the young lawyers and the general practice section and the law practice management section to try to come up with solutions. And it's a struggle every step of the way because the old way is really been around for a while. So reframing is something that I guess in our training, Susan, you do that, but in legal training, I don't think that was brought up. You go right to the conclusion, the answer.
Yeah. So that's a great answer. I don't see any other questions. I'll give people another minute or so.
I have a couple more slides that sort of a to-do. I always give homework for my online class. Should I try them?
Definitely.
List the name of 2 or 3 attorneys you can talk with about transitioning your law practice. If you've been thinking about it, find a couple trusted allies that you just see how crazy it is, or how I've been thinking the same thing. I say open a traditional file because that's how you're conditioned, and treat it like any other billable thing. You keep the time. Speak with family, key friends. Seek radical collaboration. You want to open up to as many people as possible. And don't go right to your firm and share it, but think out loud about it. Allow non-attorneys into your thinking process. Contact your accountant if you're a sole practitioner and start the ball rolling. What would this thing be worth? What do I have to do to improve it? If you have office personnel, certainly let them in on it. You already have some things like wills, life insurance, retirement investments. Pull all that stuff together as a transition, if it's the retirement type of transition plan. Seek help when you can. I would say use LOMAC. You have some amazing things. I see that Dr. Sean Healy's having a 3-hour workshop for people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That is just a great example of an open collaborative community that most bars have not had. So this final one is, make sure that if you have a succession attorney, that your estate should be able to pay the person. And some of these things that I think come right off Heidi Alexander's checklist. I mean, you can draw checks. Another one, make arrangements for payment. Yeah, that's it. Best wishes. I say this radical collaboration is new. I think you're doing a great job with it up there, putting your law practice management with your assistance program off for the well-being of the profession. And individually, you just have to start it at whatever age you're looking at. So I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, this was terrific. Thank you so much for an excellent presentation. You really did give us quite a bit to think about. I want to thank you for sharing your time and advice with us today. We will be providing a recording and the slides on our website, www.masslomat.org. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and please mark your calendars for next month's webinar, which will be on August 8th at noon, when Dan Siegel will tell us how to do 90 minutes of legal work in 60. Thank you so much everyone for tuning in, and have a terrific afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Susan.
You're quite welcome. It's a pleasure having you.
Okay.